Hi everybody, my name is Doug Balzer. I'm the pastor at River Street Church, and we are getting ready to enter into what is referred to as the Lenten season. It's part of the Christian traditions. The followers of Jesus Christ, traditionally during this period of time, we follow a pattern of fasting. So first off, I kind of want to give an explanation of what Lent is. And then I want to talk about a practical guide on how to fast during Lent or for Lent. Now, this is information in that I'm sharing with you today comes from Ben Sturkey from the Gravitational Leadership Academy. And he was so kind enough to share it with us, I wanted to pass it on to you. Except I wanted to pass it on in this form of this video. Lent can be kind of confusing for a lot of people. In fact, some people don't know why we practice Lent or what Lent is all about. So it seems to me that there is definitely a growing interest in Lent, especially for Christians, followers of Jesus Christ, and churches that are starting to observe what we call the liturgical calendar. That's a church calendar that is follows the rhythms and the cycles of Christian traditions and celebrations. And Lent is usually the first place where most churches do start looking at engaging in liturgical activities. Myself, I like the practice of Lent because it pulls me into an area of personal and self-discipline in that. So first off, let me tell you what Lent is. Lent is a season of 40 days where we practice repentance and preparation for the joys of Resurrection Sunday, or Easter as it's called by many. So Lent always starts on Wednesday. This year it's going to start on February 17th. And it lasts through Easter Sunday, which will be April 4th this year. Now, one of the traditional practices of Lent is fasting. Now, fasting generally means to go without something and or to go without eating food, and you fast that. We're told in Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 through 11, that Jesus spent 40 days fasting in the wilderness, and afterwards he was, well, starving, essentially. Famished, he was hungry. And this is part of what this reflects, is that we're following this pattern of what Jesus did in the 40 days in the wilderness. Now, many of us have fasted before, and perhaps in advance of some type of thing that we had to go through, and that Ben notes for us here that some things like surgical and medical procedures and that, or perhaps the religious tradition we grew up in practiced a Lenten fast, or did something like no meats on Fridays. That's really prevalent in Orthodox churches, such as Catholicism. Or maybe you've practiced intermittent fasting for weight loss, or some other reason in that. But at one point in time or another, I think everybody is engaged in what we would call fasting. But fasting is something that can be a really powerful practice for a person of faith, especially part of the faith-based community of Christianity. But it's also significantly misunderstood and is culturally challenging as well too, as we see how this ebbs and flows in various different cultures and societies in that. So it tends to be either badly practiced, not managed well, or not practiced at all on there. So that's one of the things that's important, is we understand that we want to do this as a correct practice in our faith as followers of Jesus Christ. So Lent would be a great time to experiment with fasting, but it's important to understand what you're getting yourself into. So Ben has shared with us some pointers on how to fast for Lent, or actually at any other time that you might choose to want to engage it. So So first off, we're going to talk about what fasting is and is not. Now, Christian fasting is not the same thing as dieting. That's one thing that a lot of people equate fasting to, is to go on a diet. It's not the same thing as going on a hunger strike either. Or it's not the same thing as punishing our bodies, or fasting for a medical procedure. No, Christianity is not any of those things. I also want you to know that Christianity is not something where we are going to do something where we are going to suffer for God. That is really a bad mindset to get into when you're thinking about the practice of Christian fasting. It is also not a spiritual practice that demonstrates how pious or devout you are to God. Righteousness, it's not for righteousness either. It doesn't equal what we term or call in our Christian faith, or in the Christian faith, if you're new to this altogether, what is referred to as holiness or sanctification either. So that's really important to get that. It's not a way of trying really hard spiritually so that God will respond to you. In the Christian faith, one of the things that we hold really near and dear to our hearts, that is the faith that we know that God is always present and always at work and is always responding to us. So that's out on there. It is not a way of trying hard to get hard spiritually so that God will respond to you on that. It's not the same thing as repenting of sin. We don't fast from sin. We confess it, and it receives forgiveness, and we turn away from it. Instead, it's a different type of repenting, which I'll cover a little bit more later. It is not an addiction program on there. If you're powerless to break a dependence cycle or such in your life, then you need to reach out for help. This isn't the way to do it on here. So instead, what we want to look at is what Christian fasting is. Christian fasting is intentionally withholding something we normally partake in, normally food, or maybe a type of food, or that, for the purpose of creating space in our lives to feast on the presence of Jesus directly. It's a change of our focus. So that's one of the things that we're going to look at here. So Christian fasting is based in the aspect of desiring to gain wisdom, focusing on God in order to gain wisdom. It's love and knowledge meeting together in practice that avails us to God and God's resources to meet our needs. So it's seeking wisdom. It's asking for wisdom. Christian fasting involves training as well too. It's the indirect effort that gives us access to something that we can't try to make happen on our own, but allows us to find that dependency in having ourselves surrender cooperatively to God, to allow ourselves to be trained in our faith, in following Jesus. And then there's the third thing that Christian fasting is, and I kind of already alluded to that, and that's surrendering. Now, we see surrendering as it's a voluntary thing, that we make ourselves weak so that we can know and receive the strength and the power of God. We want a scriptural verse for that, 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10. So that's important. Out of our weakness, God does make us strong. The world wants to say other things about that, but I really want you to know that if we really pull this together, simply put, fasting is a way to place ourselves in the way of grace, in the grace of God, by withdrawing our reliance on earthly things, so that we can, as I said, feast on God's presence and God's power. So let's talk about some of the possible ways to fast during Lent. So if you've never practiced fasting before, it's very important that you take and listen here. An easy way, you need to ease your way into the practice of fasting by doing it in a partial fast is what I'd recommend, especially if you're going to do food. A partial fast can involve, as I said, food and drink, or it can involve a certain habit or a certain activity that you have. So here's some possibilities for a partial fast. Okay, fasting from foods associated with feasting. Foods associated with feasting are things like chocolates, dessert, coffee, caffeine-laden drinks, alcohol, etc. Those type of things. Another thing that one can learn to fast from as well too is fasting from media or entertainment, fasting from the use of your cell phone, reducing your cell phone use to certain times and place, fasting from your television, streaming videos, radio, music, emails, computers, and here's one for all of our young people, video games. My grandson wouldn't like that one at all if I recommended that he fast from video games, but I think I'm going to this year on there. So we have these various different things. We can fast from habits and comforts. Okay, some of our habits and comforts are, well, shopping, looking in the mirror, makeup, even elevators, taking the stairs rather than using the elevator, parking in a spot close to the store, instead park farther out away from the store, so you have to do more of a walk in and out of it. Fast from finding the shortest checkout line, find the longest. Reading online, following sports. I know I'm going to get some feedback on that one, but all of those things are stuff that we can fast from. So again, you can fast from foods associated with feasting, you can fast from media or entertainment, or you can fast from habits and comforts. You can find something in those areas in that you can do. Now, here's some of the questions that you can, here's some questions that can help you discern a partial fast that will be challenging enough to be fruitful in your life. And these come from Aaron Damani's book, The Good of Giving Up, Discovering the Freedom of Lent. And of course, Ben mentions that here in his materials. And that I'm sharing this from Gravity Leadership Academy from Ben's Turkey. I really appreciate him making this information available because I wanted to share this with you. So here are some questions about discerning a partial fast that will help it to be fruitful. So ask yourself questions like this: what cravings are holding me back? It could also be, what habits are holding me back on there. What would be truly liberating for me to leave behind? What would work as something you could put away that could actually be liberating and you don't realize it? Short of addiction, have I become dependent on a particular food or drink or substance or activity? Probably the thing that we find that many of us are addicted to, and that's caffeine. So fasting coffee during Lent might be a really good way to deal with that. I know, the day only begins once you have your cup of coffee. I'm with you. I know what you mean. I know what you're saying there. So go on and ask this question. What would be truly challenging me for me to give up during Lent? What would really truly be challenging? And what is Jesus asking of me? I think these are all incredibly great questions, things that we can all look at and examine. We could give good consideration to. So as you consider these questions, be prayerful about it. Be prayerful and try picking one food or drink or media or comfort or or habit to give up. And then, what I'd like to ask you to do is to share this with a loved one as a way to embrace accountability. That's one of the things that's also important about this practice. You want to have some source of accountability on that. So one more thing, and that is about partial fasting during Lent, and that is Sundays don't count. Sundays are feast days, okay? Which means you don't practice your fast on Sundays. The entire season of Lent is actually 46 days long. 40 days of fasting and 6 Sundays of feasting. That's the tradition. That's how the Lent has been practiced through the centuries. So practicing a feast day helps our Lenten fast to be sustainable, something that we can have that little bit of time and that keeps us energized and empowered to keep going there. So also, one of the things I want you to do is think about a whole fast. Okay, now this is very different from what we just got done talking about. A whole fast is complete. So you might want to consider embracing a whole fast if you have the self-discipline in that. Whole fast is not abstaining from food for all of Lent. That isn't healthy. But rather the practice of skipping an entire meal and snacks for a specific amount of time. During a whole fast, you can continue to drink water. Again, I highly recommend that you continue to drink water or some other non-substantial liquid in that. You might even choose to drink something like chicken broth or something like that, because you still need to do things that will keep your body balanced and in harmony. Also, it should be, one of the things I should point out is we do not recommend fruit juices when you're on a whole fast, as their sugar content is usually extremely high, and if you're a person that has problems with blood sugar issues or high glucose or low glucose issues, and that you want to be very careful about that. So, okay, it should be pointed out that a whole fast isn't for everyone. Small children, the elderly, pregnant or nursing mothers, those with relevant health issues should not attempt a whole fast. Now, if you're concerned about fasting, talk with your medical professional about it before you try it. But if you decide to try a whole fast during Lent, consider starting with like a 12-hour fast once a week, and then see how that goes. And if that goes well, then try a 24-hour fast. Now, traditional days for Christians to fast are Wednesday, and that is to commemorate Jesus' betrayal, and Friday to commemorate Jesus' crucifixion. So here's how to do it. One, have a light dinner the night before, and don't eat anything more before bed. And then skip breakfast and lunch the next day. Break your fast at dinner time that evening. That's one of the best ways to do it. Another way to do it would be to, I think that's probably one of the best ways in that to do it. Do it in that type of a pattern on there. So, other traditional days to practice a whole fast are, like we're coming up on Ash Wednesday, and some people will fast all the way from Maundy Thursday to Holy Saturday, and then they'll break their 3-day fast on Easter morning. Some people will do a 3-day fast. But the important part about all of this is, in these practices and these things, is your experience of Jesus Christ. So I want you to be thinking about experimenting in grace. So however you decide to fast during Lent, approach it as an experiment in grace. The presence of Christ is there helping you through it, bringing you into a new level of awareness in that with Him. The point is to create space in our souls to feast on the presence of Jesus Christ in our midst. So celebrate the gospel as you fast, and look for God's grace to meet you. And it's a wonderful thing. And I think it's going to be a great thing, and I really would love to hear your stories and hear what you have to share once you've gone through and experienced these things. And I'm really grateful that you came here to the River Street Church site to get this information. I hope that it makes your Lenten season a much more joyful and celebratory time as you draw closer to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.